Hello everyone, welcome to another lesson in applied linguistics. In today's lesson, we will be talking about the intergroup model. Okay, it's another theory of language acquisition. This theory emphasizes ethnicity and issues of social inequality as a social factor in L2 learning. Okay, according to Giles and Bry, 1982, language learners tend to define themselves in ethnic terms and ethnicity with their own group. Giles and Bry, 1982, note the following as criticism against the intergroup model. It is a theory which also takes into account the relationship between the learner's group, it is in-group, and the target language group. Okay. Unlike the acculturation model that we talked about in the previous video, which sees the relationship between the groups as static and changing slowly, intergroup theory emphasizes the dynamic nature of the interaction between the groups, especially groups with different ethnic linguistic identities. So this model sees that social inequality and social factors as a social factor. Okay, so issues like ethnicity and social inequality as a social factor in L2 learning. Okay, so according to these two linguists, applied linguistic, Giles and Bry, language learners tend to define themselves in ethnic terms. Okay, so they see, for example, some learners when they are, for example, let's say they travel or they move to another country. Okay, so they don't live in their country, they live in another country. For example, you are an Arab and then you live in America. If you define yourself as an Arab, you speak Arabic and you have Islamic religion, etc., and you don't interact with other groups, so you see like uh, you don't really interact with a group of other religion, with a group of other ethnicity, etc. You don't learn their language. So this intergroup is very close to acculturation, sociocultural model that we have seen in the previous videos. So Giles and Bry noted the following as a criticism. So this is like a criticism to this model, a theory which also takes into account the relationship between the learners group and the target group. Okay, so this theory sees the relation. So for these linguists, this theory should not account for a relationship between the learners group and target language group. Okay, because this is not this shouldn't be a way to acquire or not acquire another language. Okay, it shouldn't be a blockage or a problem for learning language. Unlike the accultural model, which sees the relationship between groups as static and changing slowly, intergroup theory emphasizes the dynamic nature of the interaction between the groups. So for the intergroup, it sees that nature, okay, the dynamic nature of interaction. So the interaction between groups should be like dynamic, okay, and not static, especially groups with different ethnic linguistic identities. This model basically asserts that ethnicity and social inequality affect L2 learning negatively. Okay, so according to this model, ethnicity, so different religion, different race, different. So if you look at your group, at the language you belong, from this perspective, you cannot learn another language. So this means that ethnic group can hinder and block learning process. When the learners stick to their identity and tend to define themselves in terms of their ethnic group with whom they share the same culture and language, they do not acquire the target language. Therefore, Interaction among members of a different ethnic group is highly recommended to acquire new language. Okay, so we, as a learner of another language, if you are, for example, an Arab learner who lives, for example, in America, and you define yourself in terms of ethnic group, that is, you are an Arab, you have Arabic language, so you don't interact with other groups, you cannot learn another language. Okay, so interaction among other members of other groups is recommended if you want to learn another language. Berghuizen 2006 notes that the theory did not get off the ground probably because of lack of any research evidence to support its claim. Okay, so according to this applied linguist, this theory did not thrive, did not flourish because of lack of research evidence. Okay, so we don't have really research evidence that supports their claim. Okay, that's why this theory is kind of limited, etc. Thank you very much for your attention. Catch you guys in the next video.